Hey there! Before we start the podcast, I need you to put down that wavebird and listen up.
I need money.
For a tenth of what the price of that wireless GameCube controller costs,
That should be like $5 if you got it off Shop Goodwill.
you can support me here at the podcast of Two Consoles Too Late.
I need to buy more games.
Your support gets bonus content like additional episodes, Discord server access, typewriter manifestos, and personal shoutouts on the airwaves.
I actually have a typewriter.
So I've decided to make the Patreon free, so all those bonus podcasts and typewriter manifestos, you can have them for free. But if you do support this podcast monetarily, I still will send you a signed postcard, a signed trading card, a Miracle of Save States magnet, and a shout out on the airwaves. Anyway, let's get back to the podcast.
There's a place beyond your darkest dreams, a realm surpassing even your worst nightmares. It's called Deadside, and only the dead walk there. A world where terror can drive you to madness. A world that carries you beyond even your most dangerous visions. Only one man stands in the gateway between that world and our own. Only he holds the key to the door between Liveside and Deadside. His name, Michael Loire. He wears the ancient mask of shadows in his chest and has been transformed by it. It has given him power, made him into a taker of souls, a voodoo warrior, heir to the mysteries of Deadside. He fights alone in the darkness, plunging into the abyss to hunt, traveling into the heart of a nightmare to destroy the most evil souls either world has ever known. He is Shadow Man, and he is the one thing holding back the tide of evil which threatens to engulf the living world. The one man who has any hope of stopping the apocalypse. Two worlds, two identities, one man, Shadow Man. Come, take a walk on the dead side. Shadow Man!
All right, hello and welcome to the podcast of Two Consoles Too Late. I'm the host, Jackson Keebler, and I am Two Consoles Too Late. This episode, we'll be looking at Shadow Man for the Sega Dreamcast, a 26-year-old horror-themed action-adventure platformer from Acclaim that has since been remastered. We're going to look at the origins of Shadow Man in comics, its development history, story, gameplay, and critical reception, and its place in the Dreamcast library. And over on Auction Alert, we have a game that I recently talked about that is going for a ridiculous amount. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's go. So after my experience with Draconis Cult of the Worm on the Dreamcast, I invested in a CRT specifically so I could play Shadow Man on the Dreamcast. And I did do a brief live stream playing Shadow Man on twitch.com/2consoles2late. And it was hooked up to my LCD, which made it very difficult to play. But having this game hooked up to a CRT didn't help much either. And I found out later that that was a problem with the game, and it wasn't something specific to me or the CRT that I bought. So there was a lot of frustration with Shadow Man. And we just heard the trailer for Shadow Man from 1999. A game, of course, that I guess had a lot of hope and expectation, and it just didn't come through. I wanted to blow the dust off the Dreamcast and play the original. despite there being a remaster out there and rather cheaply available, but we'll talk about that later. So anyway, let's jump right into Shadow Man for the Sega Dreamcast from Acclaim. Shadow Man is based on the Valiant Comics character created in 1992. The series centered around a voodoo-empowered hero who defended the world of the living from supernatural forces. Acclaim Entertainment purchased Valiant Comics for $75 million in the mid-1990s and sought to adapt its characters into video games. The development of Shadow Man was handled by Acclaim Studios' T-Side. In Shadow Man, players take on the role of Michael Leroy, a former student turned voodoo warrior known as the Shadow Man. His role is to once again to protect the live side of the living world from threats originating in the dead side, a surreal afterlife filled with hostile entities. The main antagonist is Legion, a force seeking to unleash the apocalypse by recruiting serial killers from the real world. In my experience, I only saw Legion once in the opening cutscene with Jack the Ripper, and after that, I never saw Legion or heard from him ever again. He was the final boss of Shadow Man, but I did not get that far, but we're going to talk about that once again later. The story is heavily inspired by voodoo traditions. The strategy guide actually has interesting facts of how voodoo influenced the game of Shadow Man. There are 516 pots scattered around the world of Shadow Man, the live side and dead side, and these pots are called Kadu. I am probably mispronouncing that. And Kadu is French for gift. And there's 516 of these pots, and I was able to, I think, attain just north of about 350. The going joke as I was playing Shadow Man that I was waiting for Godot. And if you know the play Waiting for Godot, that's where that comes from. I'll put a link in the show notes to the strategy guide that I found on the Internet Archive. I wish that I had found it sooner, but a lot of things with Shadow Man just came a little too late. Shadow Man is a third-person action-adventure platformer. The exploration is non-linear, with interconnected environments that require revisiting once new powers are required. That is similar to a Metroidvania structure. Yes, this game is a Metroidvania, but I'm going to talk about that in a bit. The game alternates between the live side and the dead side. Progression involves navigating both worlds, solving puzzles, and defeating enemies. As you go through the game, you are collecting Dark Souls, and these Dark Souls expand Shadow Man's power and opens up previously inaccessible areas. Combat relies on conventional firearms and voodoo-themed weaponry. While serviceable, critics noticed control and camera issues, and platform elements are prominent, borrowing from the design of games such as Tomb Raider. The critical reception of Shadow Man was mixed, I would say. Upon release, Shadow Man received generally positive but mixed reviews depending on the platform. The Dreamcast version was the most highly regarded, praised for smoother performance, sharper graphics, and CD quality audio. Reviewers highlighted the ambitious scope of the world design and the atmospheric presentation, but the criticism centered on imprecise controls, awkward camera behavior, and sometimes confusing level layouts. One of the reviews that I found for Shadow Man was actually prior to this podcast, actually. And I don't like to read reviews of things before I watch. Like, if I watch a movie, I don't read the reviews. With the new Superman, I didn't read any reviews. I just watched it. Then I went back and saw the reviews. And it's the same for video games. So I found this IGN review from December 6th of 1999, written by Jeremy Dunham. And his review really informed my experience because I thought, okay, I really wanted to like this game, but I didn't like this game. Is it me? Is it my TV? What's going on with Shadow Man? And I found out that it was not just me. So I'm going to read a quick snippet from Mr. Dunham's review that really, I guess, makes me feel better for not liking Shadow Man. Unfortunately, all that audio and visual flair comes at a price because the music, voices, and terrain all stream from the GD-ROM. After the initial level has been loaded into memory, the frame rate suffers. There's a glossary word. For example, Mike will be running through a swamp and a church will appear in the distance, creating a sudden pause in the action. The same type of situation rears its ugly head whenever a new music track switches on or off as well. While the fluidity problem is a little more than a nitpick at most, it does detract from the game when you start to see it happen more and more frequently. Another minor quibble on the graphics would have to be what I like to call the silhouette factor. Translation: sometimes the game is just too damn dark. Even with a torch or flashlight, I often found that when navigating through a cave or a moonlit area, I was bumping into a wall I didn't see because it was impossible to make out through the black. I tried playing Shadow Man a few times during the day, but the slight reflection that sunlight provided on my television made it hard to get into. I eventually resorted to putting a sheet over my window to block out the light so I could continue on my journey. In other words, my recommendation is play this at night with all the lights off. It's more effective for the story that way anyhow. So once again, I bought a CRT specifically so that I could play Shadow Man. And I did not spend a lot of money on this CRT. I spent more than I should have. You can see the pictures on the Instagrams of this CRT. I paid $40 for it. It has scratches on the screen and it's got scratches on the case. And I briefly was considering doing like a little project of trying to get the scratches off the screen, but it didn't really affect the gameplay too much. So I just kind of let it be. And funny thing, I actually came across a Sony Trinitron at an estate sale, and I flipped that for a pretty penny, as I like to say here at the podcast. And but I think having my Dreamcast hooked up to a Sony Trinitron wouldn't have helped Shadow Man because of this issue that it was having with the graphics, that this game was just too damn dark. I mean, I get it that the atmosphere that they were going for of Shadow Man is gothic horror. And there's multiple levels where that definitely comes into play. One of the levels, at least for me, that was most notable was the quote-unquote playrooms. And these playrooms are just an interconnected web of basically torture chambers. And you come to one playroom, and it looks like a child's bedroom. And it's just in vast contrast to the rest of the game. And in this bedroom, it's there's like a little child's playpen, and there's some blocks, with the letters on them. And the letters on the blocks are HELL. And I thought that was interesting. But then you would go into some of these quote unquote playrooms. They're just white tiled rooms. And there's stuff written in blood on the floor. Well, I couldn't make it out because the graphics were that poor. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's because of the CRT. I don't think that was the case. If I had played the remastered version, I would have seen clearly what was written in blood. And I can't, I don't know what was exactly written. I forget. But anyway, the graphics of Shadow Man, yes, they're going for the gothic horror thing, but it was just too damn dark. And I had to stop playing. I just had to put down the controller. I couldn't finish Shadow Man because it just became a chore. I did the thing that the reviewer was talking about. I played the game only at night. I tried turning the lights off. I thought maybe that would somehow help, but it didn't. The graphics of Shadow Man fell very short. And the thing where the game was loading and it would pause mid-action happened multiple times. And multiple times it caused me to die mid-jump trying to make a leap to a platform or what have you. And it just got frustrating. And there was just so much of that in Shadow Man because I really, really wanted to like this game. And I started to like this game. But the technical difficulties of Shadow Man made it unplayable for me. But Shadow Man is often described as a cult classic, and while it never achieved the mainstream recognition of games like Resident Evil, it is remembered for its distinctive setting and tone. A sequel to Shadow Man was made exclusive for the PlayStation 2 in 2002, called Shadow Man Second Coming. And the S in second was the number 2, which I saw led to a lot of confusion amongst reviewers. In 2021, Night Dive Studios released a remastered version that restored cut content and updated the visuals, helping preserve the game for modern players. A copy of Shadow Man is easily accessible. Complete copy on price charting is $27. My local retro video game store had a copy for $30. You can see that over on the YouTubes. I did a video where I went to a local flea market, and they had a copy of Shadow Man, strangely enough. But once again, I bought my copy loose just because that's all I needed. But compared to the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation versions, the Dreamcast edition remains the most desirable due to its technical advantages of the three. But even being on the Dreamcast, this game had its faults. So once again, this game was remastered in 2021 by Night Dive Studios. And I found this out, I guess, about a week into playing this game. I've been playing Shadow Man for 2 weeks. I started 2 weeks ago. I put a picture up on the Instagrams of, setting up the CRT and everything. And this game was a grind. An absolute grind. And the remaster is on the PlayStation 4 for only $6. And I just thought, it's cheaper and it has better graphics. How many times can you say that in a sentence? But it's not the original. And there's a part of me that was like, well, if I play the remaster, I'm going to lose some sort of credibility for not playing the retro original, which is just stupid thinking. I think the remaster just kind of helped the original bring it to a new generation and just kind of help this graphic situation that it had, that the game was just too damn dark. I just got fatigued playing Shadow Man. My progression, I didn't make a lot of progression. The level design, I don't think was great. I found myself constantly going in circles. And I was trying very hard not to use online walkthroughs and Let's Plays. But you need souls, these dark souls, in order to get further in the game. Because once you reach a certain shadow level, it's 1 through 10, you can open up certain coffin gates. And these coffin gates open up new areas. So yes, this game was a Metroidvania, which had me super excited. I thought, this is great. I love Metroidvanias. However, it took me something like 2 or 3 days just to find one of the gads. And the gads are these tattoos that allow you to do certain things. The toucher gads allow you to touch ledges that are covered in fire. The marcher gads allow you to walk on lava. the Nager-gads, I'm mispronouncing, Nager, that allowed you to swim in lava. So you have these added powers that you find throughout the game, these gads, and that those added powers allowed you to access things that you couldn't before. So right away, I'm super jazzed. I'm like, yes, a Metroidvania. But by the time I had gotten the tattoos that allowed you to swim in lava, it was just kind of over for me. I collected some more Cadeau. I collected some more Dark Souls, and I was able to open up the Asylum Undercity, and I was able to go to some jail. I don't know why this jail is in the story. And I guess I killed one of the serial killers. It wasn't too hard. I just hid behind a column, ducked out, shot him, went behind the column, rinse, lather, repeat. The weapons of Shadow Man, I just used the shadow gun the whole time, which was nice because if you held the fire button, it was like a charge beam. And depending on how many Dark Souls you had more power in your shadow gun. So I didn't use the other quote unquote weapons of Shadow Man. The Asson, Asson, it was kind of like a fire wand. I got something called the marteau, which was like a drumstick, and you could access little caves with this. If you hit 3 drums, it opened up these caves, and the caves were usually filled with more Cadeau. So anyway, it was a collectathon, and I sort of liked that thing, and I got all 999 Kuroks in Breath of the Wild, so let's go for all 516 Cadeau, but I just couldn't do it because this game, I just had to stop. I had to stop and put it down. And for me to do that was hard because I'm a completionist. I like to finish things. And here I am coming into the podcast somewhat half-cocked. There are no bosses in the game. The bosses are these serial killers, and the one that I killed was, who cares? I wasn't invested enough to try to face more of these serial killers. So Shadow Man just fell short. And as I was playing the game, I was keeping notes, and my thoughts were like, every 3D platformer has its own thing or its physics. I think Prince of Persia: Sands of Time was a wonderful third-person adventure platformer. I think it's one of the finest examples. Tomb Raider, yes. But once again, I got the remaster of those games, and I went back, and that was all nostalgia. I played the Tomb Raider games just purely out of nostalgia, and going back and playing those games, even despite a remaster, I was like, you know what? The Tomb Raider wasn't that good. So I really, really wanted to like Shadow Man, and I just couldn't. And as I'm sitting here and playing, I'm comparing it constantly to Tomb Raider because Tomb Raider was good. And graphically, despite, it's the same era, it's got the polygons thing going on. So the game gets a pass because of the graphics of the time. But it had a character you were sort of invested in, Lara Croft. And as Michael Leroy, a.k.a. Shadow Man, is walking through the world of Deadside, he kind of like looks up at things within the level. And I was like, well, is he doing that like Link does in Zelda? Because in like Ocarina of Time, Link will look up at something that you need to get or like a doorway that you need to go through. And I wasn't sure. But once again, I'm comparing this game to like, Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess, another third-person action-adventure game. But the characters of Lara Croft and the characters of Link are characters that you're invested in. Michael Leroy, a.k.a. Shadow Man, is not a character that you care about. And the ancillary characters of Mama Nettie and Jaunty, they're comic relief. Well, Jaunty is comic relief. Nettie doesn't really act as much of a guide throughout the game. I mean, you go back to the bayou of Louisiana, and she just kind of tells you, get on with it. This is what you got to do. Apparently, she falls into a coma. But once again, you just don't care. You just don't care. So I think the remaster of Shadow Man is the way to go with this game. Sure, get it on the Dreamcast, the best of the three versions out of the N64, PlayStation, and the Dreamcast. It's funny to play a Dreamcast game that was better on the Dreamcast than it was on the PlayStation. But a lot of technical problems even on the Dreamcast. So I feel like I lose a little bit of credibility because I'm actually endorsing a remaster. I'd rather play the remaster on a modern console than on the Dreamcast. And does playing a remaster, is it retro? ? I don't know. That's one of those debates that's constantly going. But my in-game time was about just over 24 hours. I got just north of 100 Dark Souls, and I collected just about 350 Cadeau. And once you collect 100 Cadeau, you gained an additional hit point, which was much needed. But the combat of Shadow Man, not difficult. You just Z-targeted. Z, I mean like the left shoulder button. You would just target the enemy and just sort of strafe around them. And, there wasn't a point where I was having difficulty defeating any enemy at all in Shadow Man. Because it just wasn't that difficult. And you think that would be incentive to keep playing, but as you warp, I guess, fast travel to the different levels, through the use of your younger brother's teddy bear, your younger brother is Luke, so you would fast travel to other areas, and every time they'd have this soundbite of this child going, "Come on, Slowpoke," and it just wore on me, and I was tired. And before going into this podcast, I was like, maybe I should try to give it one more chance, but I can't. So Shadow Man for me is a thumbs down here at Two Consoles Too Late. I did not play the remaster. I think that's the way to go. I think my experience would have been greatly improved, but once again, I wouldn't have been playing the original.
Auction. Alert.
So back on episode 141 of the Two Consoles Too Late podcast, I talked about a game called Flashback, The Quest for Identity. And strangely enough, a copy has come across on the Shop Goodwills. This is coming from the Goodwill of North Central Wisconsin. And I think the water up in north central Wisconsin is probably tainted because the price of this copy of Flashback, The Quest for Our Identity, which is sealed, and this is for the PC, it has a buy it now price. Now let's read the title before I read the price. PC floppy disk rare, capital letters, 1993 Flashback, The Quest for Our Identity, big box SSL, brand new. All right. You can buy it now. You have 4 days and 13 hours to buy this game for $799.99. Now, I am just like, I wonder if that's a typo. Like, was it supposed to be $79.99? And I thought, all right, well, maybe they made an error. Nope. No, because I went and clicked on the Goodwill of North Central Wisconsin's listings. And this is not the only item that is priced outrageously. Now, in the last episode of the podcast, we talked about Samus Returns, and I talked about how a 3DS XL is going to cost, $200-$300, and that's a fair price. But the goodwill of North Central Wisconsin and all of its tainted water, they have, this is the title, a new Nintendo 3DS XL Galaxy style, complete in box with original box, powers on, and this is a buy it now of $799.99. I didn't even look at eBay to see, what a CIB Galaxy Edition 3DS XL goes for. Pretty sure it's not $799.99. But it's got 1 cent shipping. So you save a little money after you shell out $800 for this 3DS XL, which no one's going to buy. I can tell you right now, no one is going to pay $800 for that thing. And no one is certainly going to pay $800 for a sealed copy of Flashback, even with 1 cent shipping. It's just ridiculous. So anyway, I just thought that was somewhat funny, but also somewhat tragic here at Auction Alert. So my next game here at the podcast will be Mario 64. So I'm doing a complete 180 from the dark underbelly of Shadow Man. I'm kind of done with dark and brooding video games. I want something fun and lighthearted. So I'm going to be playing Mario 64. I will not be playing Hollow Knight Silksong. I know that that game's going to be a huge time sink. And I'm not sure if I want to play it on Switch or PS4. But I'm not rushing into that anytime soon because I know that's going to be a huge one here at the podcast. And somewhere along, I'm guessing in the next 3 months, we're going to get Metroid Prime 4. We're still waiting to hear about its release date. We finally got the game, but we just don't know when. And the same with Silksong, it's been long awaited and it's finally here. But I'm in no rush to play Silksong, and I'm not going to be watching any reviews of it or Let's Plays of it. I'm just going to kind of let the interwebs do what it does best. So anyway. But thank you for listening to this podcast. I have been the host, Jackson Keebler. You can check me out on the interwebs. Go to Google and type in 2 Consoles Too Late, and there I will be. Check out the Patreon. Everything is free. Just did a bonus podcast going back to episode 100 talking about my predictions for Switch 2. But as always, have a good one. I love you, and goodbye.
Shadow Man.